Hey there YouTube, Phantom Outlaw here, coming at you with another review. Today's item, as you can tell by the title, is the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0. Wow, what does that mean? Alright, so let's talk about that for a second. So the M2.0 is the newest release from Smith & Wesson. It's just been out for a short while now, 3-4 weeks I believe. There are a couple of different versions of it. I don't have both of them. Actually there's 4 or 5 different versions, but 2 different iterations, so I'll get that here in a second. There will be more coming. We don't know exactly when or where. From what I can tell, the 45 caliber versions already being produced. It should be released within the next couple of months. As far as the compact line, no word on that yet, other than it's coming. I would expect later this year, early next year perhaps on that, but I don't know that to be 100% sure as far as the timing goes. Alright, so let's talk about what we have here. What do we have? This is one of the 2 main versions. It's available with or without a safety. This particular one, as you can see, does not have a safety. I don't like safeties. You've heard me say that before in my videos. Not big fans of them because it's one more step you have to remember if you ever have to engage the firearm as far as being functionable. So this version here is available with or without a safety, black only. There's another version, that's the Desert Tan, that is only available with a safety, that has the 5-inch barrel, so the slide itself is longer. That version, as I understand it, is the one that was presented by Smith & Wesson to the recent military MHS sidearm trials that was eliminated sometime 4 to 6 months ago. That version, as we see it now, only has a safety. There will be a version of that without a safety coming sometime in the near future as well. Both this one and the one I just spoke about are available in 9mm and 40. As I said, 45 is in the works as we speak, and we should be seeing those relatively quickly. Alright, so that's a quick rundown of the different versions. We're going to talk today about this one. So this is the full-size M2.0 from the Smith & Wesson M&P lineup. 9mm, the overall length, 7.4 inches. The width is 1.3 inches, height 5.5 inches, barrel length 4.25 inches. Now, as I said, the Desert Tan version, or the one that was submitted for the trials, is a 5-inch barrel, so it's about 3/4 of an inch longer overall. There's more to that here in a moment. I'll get to it pretty quickly here. The sight radius is 6.5 inches. The weight empty is 24.7 ounces. Trigger pull, I think it's listed at 6 pounds. When I did my own trigger pull testing, I came out between 5, 7, and 6. I did it about a dozen or 15 times. I just kept doing it over and over and over again because I kept getting slightly different results. So it's definitely an improvement over the 6.5 pound trigger on the original Smith & Wesson. But it's still very, I guess it's stiff enough for something if you're going to carry it. But at around 5 3/4 or 6 pounds, that's still a pretty decent trigger pull. The finish on these firearms is Armornite. That's a newer finish from Smith & Wesson. And then if you have the Desert Tan, it is Cerakoted on top of that. The action, of course, is a striker fire action. Magazine capacity is 17 plus 1. Alright, so here's another one of the differences, and in a moment here I'm going to summarize all of the other differences. But as far as the back straps, this does come with the backstrap options. This particular one comes with 4. The previous M&P came with 3. More on that in a moment. Sights, these are also the steel white dot sights. 2 in the rear, 1 in the front. As I mentioned earlier, you can get it with or without a safety. Alright, let's talk about the major differences between, and let's do this for lack of a better term, the 1.0, which is the original Smith & Wesson M&P, and then we're going to talk some more about the 2.0, which we're talking about here. So we'll do some more comparisons here in just a moment on that one. Alright, so the differences. This is something you should be able to see. I'm not sure how obvious it is. I'll get this a little bit closer to the camera for you. The grip texture on this one is significantly different. It's much rougher, as for one term. It's more aggressive. I wish I could get a close, there you go, it's a pretty decent view for you. So it's a more aggressive grip texture. For those of you who are familiar with the Shield 45 that came out about 6 or 8 months ago, very, very, very similar to the Shield 45. Definitely a lot more aggressive than the original Shield. I'm sorry, the original M&P. There's nothing wrong with this grip texture. It's smoother. My wife likes it. I'm not trying to be sexist here, but she is not a big fan of the more aggressive grip textures. So there is a distinct difference between the two. Next thing, and this is certainly controversial, the 2.0 comes with what Smith & Wesson calls an improved trigger. Alright, so what does that mean? There are those of you out there who would argue that any trigger could be improved over the original M&P trigger. The trigger that I have in this gun, and I think I talked about this when I did the review of this one originally. This is the M&P 1.0 for lack of a better term. I have the Apex trigger kit in this one. I've had it there for, oh boy, 4 or 5 years now. So it's easy for me to forget the original trigger. Well, when this came out, I immediately grabbed one of the other ones that we had available and started comparing the two. The overall size and weight is about the same. The trigger pulls were distinctly different. Now, I'm not here to say that the original trigger on the M&P 1.0 was just god-awful, horrible, terrible, disgusting, whatever you want to call it, but many out there would say that. Having said that, as I just mentioned again, I did put the Apex trigger kit in both my 9mm and my 40 caliber M&P, and that is not a bad trigger at all. Alright, so how do we measure good trigger versus bad trigger? I'm going to leave that up to each individual person to decide on your own, but I'll tell you what I look at. Crisp, clean trigger pull. Is there a wall? How crisp is the break? How heavy is the trigger? Is it gritty? Things along those lines are what I look at, and I'm sure most other people would agree that's what they look at as well. So when it comes to the improved trigger on the M2.0, is it better than the original M&P? Yes, it is. Is it a great trigger right now? Of course not. And those people who have pulled both, myself included, would agree that the newer version is better. I don't think it quite stacks up to the Apex trigger kit, but it's not as big of a difference as the original trigger had back in the day. Alright, now having said that, I have read a bunch of reviews on this gun here over the last week and a half or 2 weeks. It seems, alright, this gun's been out for about 3 or 4 weeks now. I know that the people that I have read all these reviews on or comments on or share their thoughts on, I know that not all of them, in fact I would wager that the overwhelming majority of them have not seen or touched one of these pistols yet. So when all these people are bashing how bad this god-awful trigger is even though it's improved, let me give you some advice. Pull the trigger. Try it out yourself. If you have and you still have that opinion, then fair enough. I'm not going to say you're wrong or that I'm right. This is a better trigger than the original M&P trigger. It still has room for improvement, no doubt. But so many of the comments that I come across on this are people just absolutely bashing it. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Smith & Wesson sent millions of these guns out for people to pull the trigger on and send back. If that's the case, then I apologize. But I doubt it. So where I'm coming from with this, and I'm not trying to stir the pot, it is a better trigger than it used to be. It has room for improvement, to be sure. But don't give up on it just yet, just because you read an article or heard someone say, or your cousin's neighbor's barber said that his third client of last Tuesday said the trigger's terrible. It's not terrible. It's not great, but it is an improvement. So let's give Smith & Wesson a little bit of credit there. Do they have room to go? Absolutely. But it is still an improved trigger. All right, moving on. The front slide serrations, you have to really kind of squint to see these. You'll see them right here. They're like half. If you want to do a press check on the gun, the front slide serrations are here. It's a small little difference, so you can see it right there. It's a small little change, but it is an improvement. Is it something that you absolutely had to have? Probably not, but it is there. So let's tip our head a little bit on that one there. All right, so this is going to be a little bit different. In the original M&P, the metal inside the frame stops somewhere around right here, and you can see the rails are pretty small. The rails on the new M&P, which again, you're not really going to see this, they're about 3 times the size as the original, and the metal inside the actual frame itself extends out to about right here. So you're gaining another inch or so of metal in the frame, and I've read or seen people do all kinds of crazy twisting and torquing and all kinds of other stuff they can just to show you that, oh, this new one is not going to bend, or it doesn't this, or it doesn't that. Well, I'm not going to get into all that, because there are videos out there that already discuss that. But it is a more rigid frame now. there are these little cutouts. Now, people like to bash the cutouts. I read one comment, somebody said, oh, this is just as bad as the XDS grip zone. These little cutouts right here, where you can now see the serial number. The serial number moved from back here. When you see on the original one, okay, the serial number moved from back here to up here. Now, I have a theory on these little cutouts. And these cutouts are on both sides. There's no numbers on this side. All right, there's just the cutouts. My theory on why those cutouts may be there. As we just said, the frame, there's more metal in the frame now. Well, let me guess. More metal adds weight. The overall weight of these two pistols is very similar. I came in within about 0.02 of an ounce difference. So my belief is that part of the reason for these little cutouts on each side of the frame is to help offset the additional weight of the steel, and it's very small, but there is differences on the inside of the frame. Again, just my theory. There's another small area where we say, so wait, we'll get to that here in a moment. But that's another difference with the M2.0 is it has a longer extended steel frame inside the polymer. All right, I've already mentioned, we're going to get into this now, the grip choices on the 2.0. There are now 4 different choices. On the original, we had small, medium, and large. It wasn't that original. The difference now with the 2.0, you still have small, medium, and large. The 4th size is called medium large. That's the one I have installed on the gun right now. Normally I like the mediums. With most guns that give you choices, the medium size, which is what most guns tend to ship with, including this one already installed, that's the one I tend to stick with. I have larger hands but normal sized fingers, so I like the medium size. When I tried the different sizes out on the new one, it seemed that the medium large size, the new option, was the preferred choice. So that is a nice plus. You now have 4 choices of back straps. All 4 choices are included with the gun. This is another little small difference. Maybe it doesn't mean a whole lot. When we look at the original M&P, the magazine release is polymer. Magazine release on the 2.0 is metal. You can sort of see a little bit of a glare to see some reflection there. That's not a big deal. It is a metal magazine release. Does that make it a better magazine release? Maybe. It's just different. I'm not sure. All right. This is a really small difference. I'm going to show you the original one first. As we look right here, my finger's pointing, there's no little flare in there. As we go to the 2.0, you are going to see, and it's tough to see, right in front of my finger there, there's a little divot, a little recess carved out. I'm guessing that is designed to help improve ejection of shells. Maybe there was an issue of shells not being properly ejected or failed to eject. I'm not sure. I've shot thousands of rounds through that original M&P without a single hiccup. Knock on wood, but that gun has performed absolutely flawlessly for me for years and years and years. When I used to do IDPA shooting, that's the one I used. I never had issues with that gun. We've already talked about the little windows in the front. You can see your serial number in the front now instead of on the back. As I said, my theory, I don't know how true it is that has helped to offset some of the weight difference. All right, so those are the differences. That's what separates the 2.0 from the 1.0. The last difference, and this is not a big deal, on the original, what is for some people, I should say, you'll see right here is a beaver tail. It sticks out about a little over 1/4 of an inch, maybe not quite 1/2 an inch. On the new one, no beaver tail. Now, I'm a big fan of beaver tails. That's one of the reasons I really like the original one. On my Glocks, I like the Gen 4s because I can put that beaver tail backstrap on it. This one, I'm going to get a really high grip angle on this one. As I lock the slide back, if you look, there's still a pretty fair gap between the slide and the skin of my thumb and my hand there. I don't feel that missing the beaver tail backstrap is going to jeopardize the comfort of shooting the gun. I can still get a very high grip. I can still maintain control just fine. I have not had any slide bite issues. I've got a few hundred rounds through this gun. No issues whatsoever. So the loss of the beaver tail backstrap initially was a little bit of something in my mind, but I really don't see a concern with it. It's something that is notable, but it's really not that big of a concern, at least for me. All right, 2 other small differences I want to talk about, and I'm not sure if it's necessarily improvements. When you look at the new 2.0, right here in front of the slide release, you can see a little bar. I'm not even sure what you want to call that thing. You will notice it's absent on the original. It is not here. It is on the 2.0. What I believe that does is helps whenever you're reloading, whenever you're putting a new magazine into it. With my original one, I loved it when I was doing IDPA because I would just slam that magazine into the grip and the slide would release on its own, probably 9 out of 10 times. Nothing I did to create that situation, it's just the way it was. And I've learned from talking to a number of other people who have these guns, that's pretty common. Now that also happens with some of my Glocks, but not 9 out of 10 times, maybe 1 or 2 out of 10 times. Now maybe it's because I'm very aggressive when I'm slamming that magazine in, especially if I'm in a competition where timing and speed and adrenaline are all a factor. But with the new 2.0, it does not happen. And from what I understand, there were a number of users with the original 1.0 who commented / complained about that happening, or that feature, that was something that Smith decided to correct. So that is a correction on that they've helped to alleviate with that. So that is one thing to be aware of with that. The other difference that I haven't really, I'm going to show you this because it's pretty slick. For those of you that have with the brand new Smith & Wesson M&P 1.0, when you're taking the tool out, whether you're replacing the backstrap or whatever other purpose, you're going to rotate this, as we know, 90 degrees, and you're going to wrestle with it. Now, once you've done it 8 or 10 times in a particular gun, not just yourself, but once a gun has had that tool removed 8 or 10 times, it seems to loosen up. So, and what I would normally do is grab the magazine, hook it in here, and then yank out that tool. With the new one, and this is pretty slick, because again, I've dealt with these, it just pops right out. There's very little friction. You can now change your back straps or use this as a punch, whatever other type of tool you need. So is that an improvement? Who knows if it's an improvement. It is a difference. It's something to be aware of with the two, and it is a little, a nice little perk, if you will. All right, let's talk about a couple other quick things here. Some more pros. What's nice about this pistol, it is remarkably similar in terms of dimension and sizes. All of the, at least is maybe not all is the wrong term, the overwhelming majority of holsters that were designed for the original M&P will also work for the 2.0. I've only got a few holsters, so I can't speak to all of them. The 4 or 5 that I have work just fine. From what I've read, that seems to be true across the board. There could be exceptions out there, but for the most part, all existing holsters will work with this one, as do the magazines. Exact same magazine. So your full-size magazine in the 1.0 is the exact same magazine in the 2.0. That's a nice plus. It'll save you some money from having to go out and buy some additional magazines. All right. Trigger reset. We talked about the improved trigger a moment ago in terms of being maybe a ½ pound or so lighter weight. Another difference is the reset. Now, I know people like to use Glock trigger reset as kind of like the barometer, your measuring point for comparison. They're not the best. They're certainly not the worst as far as Glock goes, but they're consistent. The trigger reset on this one, I think, is very similar to, or maybe slightly better than, the Glocks. Certainly an improvement over the original trigger. Clearly some improvements yet to come, hopefully. They're not quite there yet. But it is a more tactile and audible reset. You feel it, you hear it, you know what's going on. No doubt about that. So that's an improvement. Is it the best? No, not by any stretch. But it is better than it was before. We already talked about the longer rails in the chassis in the front to help add some stability. It's not just the metal in the frame, it's the rails themselves. You've got more than double the size of the length of the front rail, so that's a nice plus, no doubt about that. All right, we've got the grip texture. I've talked about it being more aggressive. If you're going to go out and put hundreds of rounds to this gun on a regular basis, buy a pair of gloves. Because if you're going to do this a couple times a week, this is rough enough, unless you've got a lot of calluses, and there are those of us out there that do, I suppose. This is to the point that with hundreds and hundreds of rounds on a very, very frequent basis, you might get some skin irritation, but that's a good thing. If you ever need to use this gun in a wet environment, whether it's raining or snowing, or maybe there's some mud laying around, or, how about this, sweat, if you're under any type of pressure at all, having that additional grip texture will certainly aid you in that regard. If you're in a self-defense situation where you're shooting hundreds of rounds, well, you're probably being invaded. However, you won't care about the minor skin irritations that may result from that. But if you're going to be at the range once, twice a week, shooting a few hundred rounds each time, you may want to think about getting a pair of gloves, but that's not a bad thing. That's simply an observation on this. There are 2 color options, which is nice. Now, not everybody likes the flat dark earth version. I get it. I've heard terms like baby puke or different types of off-color jokes like that. I get it. I'm not here to tell you that choice is fantastic. It's a very common, very popular color choice right now for all manufacturers. That's a nice choice that it's available for. Or you can go with the all black. Your choice either way on that one. All right, so that's the basic pros, and there's a lot of them. I thought that was a pretty nice list there, especially in the fact that you can save some money if you've already got the original M&P. You can use the same holsters and the same magazines. As far as the sights, these are still stock sights. I've already ordered some replacement night sights that are on the way. They're the same sights that are used in the original Smith & Wesson as well. All right, let's talk about a couple of the cons, and there are a few, but not too many. Regarding the size right now, I talked about it in the beginning of this video. These are the full size. Now there's the full size 4.5 inch and the full size 5 inch barrel. That's it right now. No compact, no subcompact, no shield that I know of yet, but they're coming. So right now, the fact that you are more limited in options compared to the M&P 1.0, that's a little bit of a drawback. The beaver tail being cut off, to some people that's a huge deal. I'm not sure how big it really is. To some people, it's no big deal. Again, I was concerned about it at first, but after having shot several hundred rounds to this, never noticed it. No worries, not a big deal for me, but some people might be a little bit concerned with that. And then finally, one of the cons, we talked about the improved trigger. However, there's still a ways to go with that trigger. So it's too bad that Smith couldn't finish the deal. They took a nice step forward, but 1 or 2 more steps forward with a nice improved trigger to the level that many of us would like to have from this would have been a nice benefit. Yes, it may have cost a little bit more money. So if it had cost me another $30 or $40 on this gun to have the trigger that most of us want, I would have been happy to pay for that. And I think most of us out here would agree with that. But so that's a bit of a con. I've already given some props to the new trigger because it is an improvement. There are some steps forward with that, but it's unfinished. All right, they're not quite done yet. One other quick thing to talk about. Again, I've got the old M&P in 9 and 40. I've shot thousands of rounds between the two of them, probably 5,000 rounds between the two of them. Now, I have never claimed to be a marksman. I've never claimed to be a crack shot, anything like that. I've never been disappointed with my results. And again, as I've mentioned on my YouTube page, I don't show footage of me shooting for a couple of reasons, but among them, my results are my results. All right, good, bad, or indifferent. That may or may not reflect on your results. So I enjoy watching other people shoot the gun, no doubt about that. But I'm not out here to show you my skill set, good or bad. So that where I'm going with this is, when I say I was okay with the old accuracy of the original guns, I was okay. If I was at 7 yards or 10 yards or 20 yards, I could usually get obviously closer and more accurate in 4-inch groups or 6-inch groups or 8-inch groups with no problem. If you want me to pull the trigger 10 times with one giant hole at 20 yards, I'm the wrong guy to do that. Doesn't matter what the gun is. Where I'm going with this is, people like to complain about the barrel in the original M&Ps. I never had an issue with those barrels. Does that mean that they were great? Not saying that. I'm saying I never had an issue with those barrels. I don't know if these are improved barrels. There's no mention of them being improved barrels. They may or not be with the new gun. I don't know that. If they are not improved barrels, that doesn't take away from my experience. Several people are going to be unhappy with that if there is in fact no change. But for me, it doesn't make any difference. I'm still getting the similar or maybe even better results. Who knows? I've been shooting a lot of guns recently, so maybe my overall skill set has improved slightly. But the point is, I'm not disappointed with this barrel or this trigger. Can they be better? No doubt. But I'm okay with where they are. All right, so I'm not trying to get into a bunch of controversy with this. I just want to go over some pros, some cons, highlight the differences between the two, 1.0 and the 2.0, and share my 2 cents. I'm not trying to stir any debates with this as well. Share your opinions if you want to on this, and that's fine. I'll respond as best I can. But I see a lot of negativity out there on this gun, and I'm not sure if all of it's warranted. Some of it, absolutely, but I'm not sure if all of it is yet. Time will tell, and we shall see down the line. Thank you, folks, for watching the video. I do appreciate it. Hopefully that helps explain the differences, or at least most of them, between the original M&P and the new M&P. I like the gun. I'm happy with the gun. Other than the sights, that's just me. I think these are very good sights. I like them better than the original Glock sights, but I tend to favor night sights in just about all of my pistols. So that will be happening sooner than later with this. As soon as they come in, we'll be getting them installed. Again, thank you for watching. I hope you're all doing well. Have a great day. Take care.